Remember the first day of Shvat, and Rabbi Baumgarten was visiting Yerushalayim. So we asked him to come to Farbrengen the yeshiva. So he says, he came to the yeshiva, he said a minor after Mincha, and he starts off his Farbrengen like this. He says, there's a lot to say about learning, about davening. Ich bin nicht der Sorge von dem. I'm not the person to speak about that. He says, but I was there at the time of the Stalkus of the Friedrich Rebbe, and the story, what happened, I can tell you. So, Diane Raskin gave me a topic to speak about the struggle for inclusive Judaism. So, I can only assume that the reason for this topic, to get it right, is the Rebbe says in a Sikh about the Friedrich Rebbe, he says, the Rebbe hat sich keinmal nicht abgeschrocken vor dem zweiten Matzav. Sie ist ein Yerushalayim betachlis, sie ein mittelmäßiger, oder viel Azar, was der Stuss von Nefesh Abraham verdeckt auf den Emes. Er sehr weit, als weiß gar nicht, als darf Tshuva tun. In welchem Matzav jener ist noch gewähnt, hat sich der Rebbe vernommen mit dem sehr oft getan mit Teiva in Gashmias, was für Mela ist das gewähnt an Teiva Eich in Ruchnis. Und wir sehen about the Friedrich Rebbe, is the Baal HaGeula. So the Friedrich Rebbe was inclusive. I hope this is what you meant. Okay. I'm going to get to a letter that my father received from the Rebbe about Beis Tamuz. Get there near the end. So I really wanted to tell you a little bit about my personal story. As Chaim Raskin said, I've been a Rav in a number of different communities, but I started off in a place called Solihull. Solihull is outside Birmingham. The people there, if you tell them they're from Birmingham, they get very upset. They consider that they're much more special. We don't live in Birmingham, we live in Solihull. They're big snobs. And these people, most of the Yidden that lived in Solihull, moved away from Birmingham that was too Jewish for them. They didn't want to be in that community. They moved to a place where there was no community. Yidden are very special people. And after a while, they decided they're going to make their own community, which they did. They made it at the beginning of the 1960s. They started meeting in a hall and davening Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, then once a month. And eventually, 1977, I remember the plaque on the wall in the shul, 1970, they built themselves a shul. And they started davening every Shabbos. So Rabbi Shmuel Akish came to Shliach in Birmingham, and he sees this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to bring in a younger man, bring in a Lubavitcher, and he can be the Rav of this community. So he calls me up. I just finished learning in Kodel. He calls me up. He says, I've got an offer for you. He says, I want you to come to Birmingham. You can do pu'ulas in the Chabad house. We're building a big Chabad house, which we did. And also, I want you to become the Rav of the community in Solihull. Okay, sounds good. I want you to come out. We'll spend a few days together. You'll come here. You'll see everything. You'll meet the people. Then he calls me up again. He says, I got a better idea. I spoke with them. You can come for the Yom Norah. You can come for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. You can be the rabbi in the shul, which is very nice. And I'm getting prepared for that. Then I get another phone call from him. He says, there's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is the shul doesn't have a mechitza. Problem. I want to tell you what I mean. It doesn't have a mechitza. It means like this. Imagine that's the shul. Imagine that's the Aron Kodesh. There's like a bimmer over here. So the men sit on both sides, and the women sit right up the middle, up to the bima. And there's no mechitza or anything. There's a rope between the men's section and the women's section. So I said, that's a problem. So he says to me, I built them a mechitza. I built them a mechitza, but they don't like it. They don't want a mechitza. And they tell me also that the chief rabbi Jacobovitz came here and he consecrated the shul, and we didn't have a mechitza. So why all of a sudden do we need a mechitza? So I spent Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur at 770 in Crown Heights, and then I get another phone call from him. Listen, you can come out, and we'll start it slowly. You'll do Pu'ulas in Birmingham, and you become the director of education. We got a cheder, you'll run that cheder. Come out for a few days. So I went over to Birmingham. I went with him to the University of Cambridge, and I met with the Balabatim there at the shul. We got on together. So I went back to New York. I had another Hatzah, New Jersey, and I wrote to the Rebbe. What should I do? Should I go here? Should I go there? I didn't get an answer. Wait a week, didn't get an answer. I went to Rabbi Chodikov. Rabbi Chodikov says, give me a copy of your zettel. So I made a copy of the zettel. I put it in an envelope. Rabbi Chodikov writes on the outside, writes, L'da'ati dachuf. In my opinion, this is urgent. Gives it to the Rebbe. I didn't get an answer. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm already giving up on both of these ideas. Then, about a month later, I get a call, I get an answer. And it says, the Rebbe has put a circle around the word Anglia, which is in the zettel, and put a line to the side, and he writes, Adifus. I'd written in my letter, I got no preference. I got no preference whether I go here or there. I go where the Rebbe tells me to go. And the Rebbe wrote by the side, Adifus, England, right, I'm going to England. So I came here. Anyway, I started getting involved with the community, and I was running the cheder, and I was giving shiurim and meeting people. And they say to me, okay, we get on together, we'll put up a mechitza. So we had directives from the London Beis Din. It's how high the mechitza should be, how it should be made. The first three have got to be opaque, you can't see through. The top part you can see through, but it's got to be a division so you can't pass things through. And also, I was concerned because there's a letter from the Rebbe. The Rebbe says that a mechitza has to be at least 6 foot high. Before there was Igros Kodesh, there were other svarim letters from the Rebbe about halacha, and in one of these letters, the Rebbe says that mechitza has to be at least 6 foot high. So the Beis Din is saying it's got to be 5'3", and the Rebbe says it's got to be 6 foot high. So I discussed it with Rabbi Sudak, and I discussed other things I was concerned about, and he told me what to write. So I wrote to the Rebbe what's going on. I sent in the psak from the Beis Din, and I had another question that I realized that it's not possible in this community to have a minyan in shul on Shabbos if people don't get in the car. It's not going to happen. It's not that you've got 10 Yidden who live near the shul and are going to come to shul, and then other people going to come. There's no minyan unless people drive to shul. So Rabbi Sudak said to me, write to the Rebbe like this. Write to the Rebbe. Should it be ma'akev? Should it be prevent me taking this position because of the situation with the minyan? So the Rebbe doesn't have to say anything. The Rebbe doesn't say anything. Obviously, it's not ma'akev. You know, you're not asking the Rebbe to come out and say, yes, you can do it. It's just if he doesn't say anything, it's okay. The Rebbe didn't say anything wrong at all. The Rebbe didn't address that point at all. So the people say, right, we're going to build, and he didn't have any problem with the psak of the Beis Din, even though it's 9 inches less than what he wrote in the letter. So I'm all set. They're building me a mechitza, and I'm going to go there. It's the second Rosh Hashanah already that I'm going to go there. So a few weeks before, I get a call from the president of the community. He says, I'd like to meet with you at my house with the chairman of the shul, and we'll talk about things. Come to the shul first, and then we'll go to my house. So I go to the shul first, I meet them there, and they built a mechitza. But what they've done is, they haven't built the whole mechitza. They built the first 3 foot, which is made of wood, because they're businessmen. Like, I'll meet you halfway. This was their attitude. And if it works out well, then we'll build the other half, build the rest of it. So I said to them, I don't feel particularly good about this. And I feel that it's so bad about the behavior. But so I said to them, gentlemen, we've reached an impasse. This is not, I can't do less than this. It has to be.
So you did that here?
But
How long have you been
I've been there about 8 months.
And you
8, 9
done
months. I haven't been down. I was living in Birmingham. I haven't been dabbling there or anything. I wouldn't move there unless, I'm sorry, I wouldn't move there unless they built a mechitza. I don't want to bore you all detail. I wouldn't move there. I was living in Birmingham. I was working at the Chabad house, and I was going over there, not to be their Rob, just to go there to do educational programs. Okay. So the idea, I would go there for Rosh Hashanah, and then we're going to build a mechitza. Didn't we? But halfway. So I said, So we said, well, they said, well, we can't do more than this. Okay, so this is the situation I'm in. So I wrote to the Rebbe, what should I do now? What should I do now? I can't accept half a mechitza. I remember Farbrengen were telling me at the time, there's no such thing as either half a mechitza. Either it's a mechitza or it's not a mechitza. So I wrote to the Rebbe. I got an answer. I haven't put the whole answer. I've written down what I remember. And I remember pretty clearly the things that are relevant to what I want to say. First, the Rebbe says to me, Hari Paul v'hitzliach harba for Birmingham. You've done good work in Birmingham. V'gam hischil v'bisus hayadus v'solihal. And you started in the foundation of Yiddishkeit in Solihal. And then he says to me like this, Yamshich, you should continue, all the activities, and all the jobs you're doing. Then he says like this, do not enter into any argument that will arouse in the opposition, because there's always going to be an opposition to any rabbi that's going to. There's people there that vehemently didn't want a Lubavitch rabbi, which is a very unusual thing in those days. You can count the number of Lubavitch rabbanim. You didn't need a whole hand to count them. So don't get involved in any machlokes that can be ma'ora in the tzashionei, in the opposition. Regesh shown itself and a feeling of victory. Seeing as he has in his hand the clear pesakdin of the Rav Rashi of the whole country, and the Rebbe underlined the words Shal Kol HaMedina. Talmid Efshel Amayna, you can always answer Hadov. You can always say I'm not allowed to do this. But don't get involved in that argument. What are you going to do? Lekarev echad. You be mekarev one person at a time. Ad sheyiyu harev amachriya, until they will be the majority of the community that will be machriya. You don't need everybody on your side. I mean, I'm adding this myself, like Mordechai Yehudi, Rotzil Rev echad. You don't need the whole. You don't need everybody. You need to have the rev amachriya. Then he says like this. Obviously, you don't give a Hershel the sign which is awesome. That's why I'm always calling you up to make sure things that which seem strange to you, they're really allowed. Okay? And he says, safe, yatzlich, and in the end, you'll be matzlich. It's a very powerful answer. It's like a manual, a step-by-step guide how to be successful in this situation. And that's what I did. So I continued there with the educational things I did. I continued whatever I did in Birmingham. And I used to go every week to meet people and to be Makarim to put on tefillin just at that time, but just sort of to get them feeling good about the idea of having me there, having a frum Rav over there. And what happened was there was a change. There was a change in the chairman. There was a new chairman, an older person. He didn't know the whole story. I went over to him. I explained it to him. And he says, I like you. And in the end, they built the rest of the mechitza. I don't know if anybody, you were there once. You probably don't remember. Nicky Sapper was there once for Shabbos. It's not the type of mechitza you're going to find in Stanford Hill, but it's a kosher mechitza according to the Psak Din Haborosh of Rabbi Rashi, Medina. And we moved there. It took a year and 2/3, okay, till we moved there finally for Rosh Hashanah, the third Rosh Hashanah. So we didn't miss the first one, we missed the second, we made it there. So that is the answer which I got, and that for me was a lesson for my whole life. You talk about inclusive Judaism. There's a few things. The first thing is, don't get involved in an argument with someone that's going to make them feel they won the argument, and they certainly don't want to lose the argument either. Don't kid yourselves. You mekarev each person. Each person is an effort. Each person is an individual, and you have to show them that they are valued as an individual. In this sikha, which I quoted at the beginning, the Rebbe speaks about doing, the Friedrich Rebbe would do a teva begashmius. His way of being mekarev people, of bringing out the Pintele Yidden, the Muz, do a teva begashmius. And we see this, every shliach sees it very, very, very clearly. What makes somebody like you, what makes somebody want to be closer to you, is what you do for them. A few years ago, I had my Einikus bar mitzvah, so my brother-in-law, Reuven Matzo, came over from France. He was telling me that a long time, in the 1960s, a group of students went from France to the Rebbe, and they went in with a list of questions. And one of the questions was, why is it that your Hasidim have got a picture of you in their house? Not just one picture, many pictures, right? In fact, the Rebbe asked the same question of my father. When my father prepared the challenge, there's a book called Challenge, which my parents produced, green book. So if you look at it, the last page of the book, the last item, the last picture is a picture of the Rebbe putting the crown on the Sefer Torah on Yud Shvat Tavshin Lamed. So my parents were going to Yiddishkeit, they had the proofs for the book, and Yudel Kritzky comes in the office and he's got this picture. It's a famous picture. The Rebbe's putting the crown on top of the Sefer Torah. My father says, "Can I have that?" That's perfect. That's what we need to finish the book. And he said, "Give it to me." And he taped it on there. And they went in. They handed it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe looked through it quickly, and he says, "I see there's a picture of me at the end of the book. There's a picture. I know that I can see there's a picture of me at the beginning, and I know there must be a picture in the middle too. I'm sure there's a picture of me in the middle. Won't people say there's too much Rebbe?" So my father thought he was going to be clever, and he says, "I thought that's what the Lubavitch was. The Rebbe at the beginning, the Rebbe in the middle, and the Rebbe at the end." And the Rebbe became very, very serious. And he says, "No, I'm only 70 years old. And Chabad," he said exactly how many years it was since the Alter Rebbe. "Chabad is that much old." So this is the question. These students from France, they asked the Rebbe this question. How come all your Hasidim have got pictures of you in the house? It doesn't look good. You know, so these people found it strange. So Reuven told me that the Rebbe answered them like this. He said, they have a picture of me because, I don't know the exact words, because of what I do for them. They love me. If they have a love for me, it's because of the care which I showed to them, the love which I showed to them. Now, Arendorf Safran used to have a picture of Ben Sishentov in his house. I remember going to his house, he had a picture of Ben Sishentov in his house. What?
It's in his office.
It's upstairs. Okay. Why? Because he's a person that did something for him. It's a person that had a profound effect on him, that changed his life. You have pictures of people you love in your home, people that do something for you or give you something. There's another thing which it says over here in the Sikha, that the Frierdiker Rebbe, what was very important to him was the pu'ula, the act, what you actually do. My son Zalmi sent me a picture. He says, you know the story you always tell? There's a joke, I'm going to tell you the joke in a minute. He says, the Rebbe told it a Farbrengen. He found it in a Farbrengen from Tafshel Lamed Vav. The Rebbe tells this story. He says, I say the Rebbe says it. He says, them a bewusste joke. There's a well-known joke. Amal hat man a man given a younger Rav in a shul. As he's gekommen Shabbos, hat gedacht sagen a drasha. When it came Shabbos, this young rabbi had to make a drasha. Hat machle given as a vert reden wegen Shmir Shabbos. So he decided he's going to speak about keeping Shabbos. He's gekommen zu the president from shul. So the president of the shul came to him. And hat gesagt, and he said to him, soll nicht reden wegen Shmir Shabbos. Don't speak about Shmir Shabbos. Was ist da als eine Balabatim, was ist in the challenge? There are some Balabatim that don't keep Shabbos. Well, they meinen, as the Rav means saying, I think the Rav's talking about them. Well, they sich feeling getroffen. They'll feel bad. They'll feel like they've been picked up. The Shabbos is gekommen den zweiten Shabbos, when the second Shabbos came, hat gewollt reden wegen Kashrus. He wanted to speak about Kashrus. And then noch wegen Taras Mishpacha, and then about Taras Mishpacha. And jeder Mal hat dem gesagt, dem President, soll nicht reden wegen dem. Every time the president said, don't speak about that. Was ist da Balabatim was well and meinen, as the Rebbe means say, because there's Balabatim will think the Rebbe, the Rav means that. Hat him the Rav gefragt, wegen was soll ich reden? So the Rabbi asked him, what should I speak about? Du willst doch, als ich soll sagen, a drasha on Shabbos. You want me to say a drasha every Shabbos? So what shall I speak about? Hat him the president gesagt, so the president of the shul said to him, red wegen Yiddishkeit. Speak about Yiddishkeit. That's the joke. That's the bewusste joke. Okay, it's the Rebbe's joke. And the Rebbe says, Al derech zeh beneget some convention. Me red wegen Yiddishkeit. Me sagt, as it darf sein, azay and azay. Me sagt, aber nicht, was me darf tun, benegel apel. There's a lot of talking, but nobody says what you should actually do. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe says in the Sikh, the Frierdiker Rebbe was, it's all benegel apel. What are you actually going to do? What are you actually going to do? I've got a letter here the Rebbe sent to my parents. It says, by the grace of God, 2nd of Tamuz 5727. This is 1967. This is a long time ago. Some years, Rabbi will tell me how many years ago, 1967. 1967, how many years ago? 55 years, okay, 54 years. Okay. So the Rebbe says, he says, I was particularly gratified to note also of your good decision with regard to the education of your children. Okay. And he says, not less gratified am I to read about your activities in connection with the Lubavitch house. And he says, we have now entered the particularly auspicious month, the month of Tamuz, the anniversary of the liberation of my father-in-law of saintly memory. the history of which is undoubtedly familiar to you. And he says, I trust you will suitably observe this coming anniversary on the 12th and 13th of Tamuz and derive lasting inspiration from it. The obvious lesson which we must draw from it is this. If a Jew can accomplish so much for Yiddishkeit single-handedly, despite overwhelming odds and obstacles, how much must each and every one of us try to do our share? Being fortunate in living under infinitely better circumstances, with complete freedom of action to strengthen and spread Torah Yiddishkeit. The Rebbe's point is a very simple, very strong point. If the Friedrich Rebbe could do everything he did in Russia, in the Soviet Union, with all the obstacles and terrible persecution, and Rahman al-Islam, threat of death, then exile. What about us? No one is threatening us. It's not as good as it used to be in this country, but it's still pretty good. We have tremendous opportunities over here. I'm now the rabbi in Brighton. I get up every morning. I thank God for Yehuda Pink, who came and took over in Solihull. So I don't feel that they're not losing out. They've got another Lubavitch rabbi. I'm the rabbi in Brighton. And right now we're building a new shul, and we're also building a mikveh. This will be the first time in 15, 16 years that the community in Brighton, there's thousands of Yidden there, will have had a mikveh. And it's going to be a Mahudadika mikveh, Bur al Gabe Bur. It's going to be a beautiful mikveh, hopefully. And you said, the Rebbe said, the Friedrich Rebbe said about the mikveh in Kasramar, you got some blood. And I said to somebody recently, I've sweated blood for this mikveh. I've had Balabach, we can't do this, we're doing it. And I'm going tomorrow, they're going to pour the last concrete, the wall, the floor which goes between the Bertachten to the actual mikveh pool. And the rest of it is all poured already. So it's set in concrete. If there's an earthquake, it's going to happen. So it was my birthday a few months ago. Rader settled to the Rebbe, asking about Tzlachim, all my Yonim. And I wrote befrat two things: the mikveh which we're building in Brighton, and then another personal thing. And before I sent off the settle, I put it in volume the Igros, and that's what I do. I'm not getting involved in that, right? So I open it up over here. It's the end of a letter. I flip back to the beginning of the letter. It says, not only the Kabul, and then it says, Uvamaina al bakashose bracha. Answer to you asking for a bracha. In a kva birchose amura bakosef. His bracha, referring to the person who written this letter, is already written in a pasuk, where it says, Ritzain Yereav Yaseh, that Hashem will perform the will of those B'li Hagbala, without any Hagbala. B'mash Yihi HaRatzon. Uvilvad, only Shizar Ritzain Yerei Hashem. This is the Ratzon of Yerei Hashem. The Kaven Asher Sokeh Shokavete Losuhu Bam Shochas Yirol of Nei Ali De Inyan HaMikvos. Seeing as this person I wrote this letter is Isaac in bringing Yirol of Nei Yisrael through the Inyan Mikvos, and he goes on to explain this. So it's a letter. I'm not going to go through the whole letter. Basically, what he's saying to the person that wrote this letter, seeing as you are Isaac in the building of a mikveh, you'll get the bracha. So I read this. It was quite, to me it felt. This is my personal feeling. I felt like the Rebbe was speaking to me again. That's how I felt. We have. The mikveh was designed by Rabbi Meir Posen, who was originally here in London, but he can't come here because for the COVID, he couldn't come. He's 99, this guy. And he does plans on his computer for Miklos. It's an amazing thing. In fact, he told me that when he went to buy the program for the computer, they didn't want to sell it to him because he was too old. He won't be able to use it. But he to me, and he's back emailing backwards, forwards. But he wasn't able to come here. So we brought down a younger man, a really, really lovely guy. He's a Rosh Kollel in Vision here in Stanford. His name is Hershel. I don't know if anybody here knows him. And he's really good. And he's involved in all the mikvahs which they're building here in Stanford Hill now. He's involved in them. And he's really good at this. And also he's good at speaking to the goyim, the builders and the architects. Whatever, he's a nice guy and he smiles at them, and whatever he asks them to do, they seem to agree to. So I was speaking to him. I said, really, we'd like to give you something. You've come here 6-7 times already. We want to give you something for your work. So he says, I said, how much do you want? So he says to me, listen, whatever you give me, it'll be fine. I do it for the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, and whatever you give me will be fine. He says, you're giving your whole life to this. I just give a little bit of my time. One thing I can tell you is that if what the Frierdiker Rebbe seems, what the Rebbe says, and Frierdiker Rebbe says, seems very clear to me. We can learn from this Beis Tamuz, this Gimel Tamuz. We can learn that if a person is prepared for themselves, not everybody can dedicate their whole life, their whole day. And I can tell you something else, that Rabbanim, Shluchim spend most of the time doing things which are really nothing to do with what they really want to do. But if we dedicate the eichus, qualitatively, we dedicate ourselves to the Rebbe's work, to be makar of effort. Whatever type they are, whether they're this type, the middle messiker, or the other type, the other end of the spectrum, then safe, in the end, we will be matzliach. And if we do that, if we do what the Rebbe wants, then we will be kelim for the brachas, which the Rebbe is waiting to give us. And Chaim.